10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. July 8th, Avalon, California at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Several hundred people on Santa Catalina Island off Long Beach saw a flight of 6 disc-shaped objects pass over the island. Among the witnesses were Army Air Corps veterans Bob Jung, Kenneth Johnson, and Alvio Russo. Jung, a former aerial photographer in the service, was able to photograph one of the discs. Russo, a pilot who had flown 35 missions over Europe with the 8th Air Force, estimated the speed of the object at 850 miles per hour. Jung compared their speed with that of the Navy's Tiny Tim rocket. That from the report on the UFO wave of 47. Joining me today is Dr. Bill. What is happening?
Hey, nothing much. Which case was that?
That is case 734, sir. And you know, Catalina Island is one of my favorite places. And when I went there, I went ziplining, and the guys that help us, so we don't fall into the trees, stated that they had, both guys said, yeah, we've seen UFOs. And that's part of the area where the USOs are reported under, the underwater submerged objects are pumping in and out, That's the story down there.
Okay.
So, very cool.
All right. Yes. I have to cough.
So we're doing this, the report on the wave. You have Ted Bloecher, and with an introduction by James McDonald. We're kind of going over some of the, and this is one of the most comprehensive reports on the wave and of UFO sightings. And I mean, this is a truly well put together report.
From 1947. From news reports from 1947 with some follow-ups by Dr. McDonald. Yeah, it is. And they've done a nice breakdown. Although I haven't been able to, I was going to try and put together a list of observables. And I haven't really added anything new. But I'll work on that. So we've just got done talking for like an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm talked out. So we're gonna wrap it up. Oh, I'm kidding.
Not quite yet, but yeah.
Oh yeah, we should have been recording the whole time. So one of the things that I just did is I went in and I looked at the New York Times archive for 1947, and I pulled a few articles that were being published at the time all this stuff was happening, which is interesting. We'll get to that. So do we want to talk about, I know this isn't the most exciting thing to do. Do we want to talk about some of these observations that people were making?
Yeah, let's go over a few of them so we can...
Do you want to start, or do you want me to look for something in my notes?
Go ahead out of your notes.
Yeah, I think I'm all talked out. One of the things, what do we got here? We got case 442, July 6, Greendale, Virginia. This was reported in the Richmond Times Dispatch, and was seen by Walter Broadwell Jr. of Fordham Road in West End section of Richmond while driving with his wife at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to visit relatives in Greendale. Him and his wife were discussing news reports of flying saucers when, according to Mr. Broadwell, Mrs. Broadwell suddenly exclaimed, "There they are now," because they were talking about UFOs. He goes, "I looked up," Broadwell reported, "and there they were 10 or 15, not more than a quarter mile away. They definitely could not have been airplanes because I have taken flying lessons, and I know what a plane looks like." Very grouped in a loose formation, they were just below the clouds, flying north and shining like aluminum. Broadwell, Dr. McDonald checked the newspaper report, says it's essentially accurate, except that they were also with their daughter, who was 7 years old. And she was the one who first spotted the objects, according to Broadwell's account to Dr. McDonald. Should add that this is all these reports are from 1947, and Dr. McDonald, this is 20 years later, was contacting people and verifying their sightings and comparing them to the newspaper report. Dr. McDonald said that Broadwell reported that he pulled the car off to the side of the road to watch the objects, about a dozen in all. Could not make a firm estimate of heights, saw no sounds, saw no lights, no exhaust. The objects moved lazily along, strung out in more or less of a line. They twisted and flipped in an undulatory manner, but very slowly, reflecting the sun from their aluminum surfaces at times. This is like what Arnold saw. Broadwell estimated their speed to be about that of a small aircraft, said their diameter was about 25 feet, and they moved most of the time on edge in the attitude of a wheel, which I thought this was interesting because this was something that was commonly seen in 1947. I don't think this was commonly seen later in later sightings in the 60s or whenever.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the beginning. I mean, 47. I mean, they've had sightings forever. I mean, across history. But 47 was just such a mega. I mean, I'm just curious as to why all of a sudden in 47, is there million sightings? Well, not a million, but a lot of sightings across the U.S. And we haven't even looked in. Have you looked in to see if is this a world thing or was this just a U.S. thing?
It apparently is, according to the New York Times, because I pulled, I think, 4 or 5 articles from the New York Times archive for 1947. There's one of them. Oh, they mentioned Roswell in here. We'll get to that in the New York Times articles.
Yeah. Did Roswell kick? I mean, they didn't really kick off. That was July, but this has been going on. And something, I'm just going to pop in case 320 in July 5th, in Mountain View, California, home on leave from Hamilton Air Force Base, Sergeant Charles Seguin reported in San Jose that at about 11 o'clock, he and his wife and mother-in-law neighbors saw a silvery disc-shaped object fly over the Mountain View home at the southern end of the Bay Area. The object, at an estimated altitude of 5,000 feet, was clearly visible in the witnesses as it circled over Black Mountain, the tallest peak in the Montebello Range. 5 miles southward of Mountain View, it dipped several times and then headed westward toward the sea. Segala reported. He said that the object appeared to be about as big as an automobile and made no noise. And I'm going to mention Hamilton Air Force Base because this is where the Maury Island incident, that's where the B-25 came from that ultimately crashed in the Washington area. And it was carrying the evidence from the Maury Island incident. And that was also in 1947. So I don't know, there's no tie-in probably. But
I have an article on the Maury Island sighting from the New York Times, August 10th, 1947. It's very short. I shall read it.
What have they got? I shall read.
Oh, there's no reporter. It says, special to the New York Times. Boat floats, disc or no, is the title. It says, explosion is as unfounded as saucer itself at Western Beach. San Francisco, August 9th, reports that flying discs struck and destroyed a small boat off Maury Island near Tacoma, Washington, have been disproved through official investigation, the 4th Air Force announced here yesterday. So that's the base you were just talking about.
Right.
Lieutenant Colonel L. Springer, Assistant Chief of the Intelligence Division, conducted the investigation. He said he saw the boat, which was said to have exploded after being struck by a flying disc. He found it intact. No explanation was offered for reports of the explosion. This is in direct contradiction to the reports we read by Arnold and E.L. Smith, that pilot, who's also mentioned in one of the New York Times articles. A formal statement from the Air Force says headquarters of the 4th Air Force announces there is not sufficient evidence or testimony available to headquarters to conclude whether or not reports of so-called flying disc had any basis in fact. In view of this, headquarters will not pursue this particular Tacoma investigation any further. Colonel Springer brought back a sack of specimens, apparently molten metal, which were found on the beach at Maury Island. He said he had no idea of the source of these specimens, but noted that they were abundant in the area which is adjacent to a smelter. So this is sort of, well, it's short, but we know that this guy got these specimens from Arnold and Smith in the hotel room, and then he drove them over to the smelter to show them that the stuff was essentially from the smelter, and he didn't gather it from the beach. Well, they said the other guys gathered it from the beach, so I don't know.
I don't
know.
There's so many weird things that went on with this Maury thing.
The Maury Island thing.
The plane just happens to fucking crash after it takes off. It's so bizarre of a, and two of the guys got, and what happened to the two guys that parachuted out? Oh,
they were okay. One guy broke his leg, and the other, they both, I don't know, we don't know what happened to them later on, but they did survive. Yeah. There was, I've been reading, actually I recommend this book. You should pick up a copy. They're not that expensive. Flying Saucers Serious Business by Frank Edwards. I've started reading that. And there was two incidents, where flying saucers, it sounded a lot like Maury Island. This was in Brazil. There was 3 flying saucers. One of them was having trouble. And then the other flying saucer got close. One flying saucer got close to a flying saucer that was having trouble and started spewing molten metal at it. And then the flying saucer recovered and took off. And then the people gathered up the molten metal because it landed all over this village or something. And it was analyzed, and it was tin. So whatever was sprayed out was molten tin. And then there was another thing where they got the other one was also I think in Brazil. A flying saucer, I've seen this before. We might have even talked about it. A flying saucer exploded over a beach, and the material went in the water, and people were able to grab the material, and it was later analyzed to be pure magnesium, which they're saying, at least in the Edwards book, that it was unusual at the time for people to get pure magnesium. And anyway, I don't know. So those were interesting. But the thing that caught my eye was the other thing with the 3 flying saucers, sort of like Maury Island, and one of the flying saucers, in Maury Island, they were donut-shaped, and one of them was spewing material. And in this one, the flying saucer spewed material at the other flying saucer and fixed it somehow.
Well, maybe that's just their Fiero model.
The Fiero? What's that? Fiero?
Yeah, the Pontiac Fiero. And that's the model of flying saucer. It doesn't really work that well, so that's the Fiero model. It has trouble. The donut shape seems to be one of the problematic designs of the time.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, so if it's technologically, it's relatively easy to send a small probe to another solar system. They're actually talking about it. I'm listening to Wild Thing podcast, and there's actually a group of people. Although, of course, when they talk about doing these things, it's always 10 years in the future, but they're talking about sending a really tiny probe to Alpha Centauri using light sails and lasers to spin it up to 0.2 the speed of light, in which case it will just like fly through the solar system at Alpha Centauri in like 2 minutes or something crazy. But
no, it couldn't get there in 2 minutes.
No. Once it's there, it's only in the solar system for a few minutes because it's traveling so fast. And
that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, if it's traveling at 0.2 the speed of light, it's moving pretty fast. But how
long will it take to get there at 0.2?
I can't remember. It's 10 years maybe. So it's within. I mean, it's theoretically you could send a probe to, and then it's 4 years away. I think it's 4 years away. So it takes 10 years to get there, and then it'll be another 4 years for it to send a signal back. So once you spun up and sent a probe to a nearby star system, I mean, it's going to take decades before you get any information.
So maybe this is what's happening with us. Maybe they were just probes from.
That's what I'm thinking. We now know about AI, and it should be possible to actually create a probe that could do a series of things. You could create a probe that could even create creatures. Hang on. Yeah, we talk for an hour and a half, and then I start drinking something, and I get all phlegmy. So it's perfectly possible to create a probe. And to go to another solar system. If the probe has the ability to do manufacturing, it could replicate itself. It could build things like 3D printers, and it could probably even 3D print organic beings. And you remember you've read Scott Sigler's books?
Yes, of course.
The GFL books and stuff. I just read his.
The GFL books are awesome. The Rookie.
Yeah. And he just wrote a book. He just published another book that he wrote the sequel to. It took him 15 years, bastard. But he has a book called Pandemic, and it's like a space probe just releases essentially like cells into the atmosphere, and these cells will drift down and land on people, and then they will grow into these like things on your skin that will take over your mind, and it's part of an alien invasion type thing.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And that shows you it's plausible. So it's possible that I would say it's possible, and it's even likely that alien space probes that can self-replicate could come to our solar system, come to our planet, and depending on if they're programmed just to observe and document, we would be seeing exactly what we're seeing. In particular, with the what I think we might be seeing, and this is actually mentioned in Frank Edwards' book when he talks about the observations from 1897 to the observations, how the flying saucers and stuff have changed in 50 years or 70, 80 years, 70 years. If it's an AI, it would evolve its technology and develop it as it could build resources, and it could be building resources under the ocean. So yeah, why not? And that might explain why we see so many different types of flying saucers and stuff, is because you have machines building better machines. And he was even speculating that the machines were adapting to our technology to continue to outpace it. Because I mean, you don't want to, if its primary programming says you're supposed to observe and not be captured, you would evolve to stay ahead of the technology that you're observing. Anyway, my 2 cents. Why
don't we shoot them down, Bill? Why don't we just shoot one down? Just to see what's in it.
That's the
You know, I
And
mean,
Frank
it says,
Edwards,
oh, they go
I can't.
1,500 miles an hour. I go, well, yeah, I
Oh,
think a fucking Exocet missile or a Sparrow could
oh,
probably catch that
I
thing.
can't. I can't recommend. You got to pick up this Flying Saucer Serious Business by Frank Edwards. They're cheap. There's a ton of them out there,
You
and
already have that somewhere.
you might, and he talks about it here where there was a fighter jet over Washington D.C. fired upon. He says an actual fighter jet fired on a UFO and knocked a piece off of it.
Okay.
And it was, I think that he says they even recovered the piece of material, but it was all hushed up. I think he says this might be in the Kehoe book, the UFO conspiracy book, which I haven't read yet. Anyway, and then
I mean, okay, that's fine. Okay, so today we have our fighters are just slightly more advanced, and between the speed of the fighter jet and the missiles, the assets that it carries. Why don't we just shoot one? I mean, we're over water. I mean, that one where we painted it with the gun camera, the Tic Tac one, and they're dicking around with it. Why don't you just launch?
They were unarmed.
I know they can't just randomly. Oh, they weren't armed.
They weren't armed.
It wasn't.
The lady pilot. She says that's one
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, look at when we were in. It's like they never gave us. They rarely gave us anything that we could hurt ourselves with.
Yeah, because we're stupid. We end up shooting our, someone.
But we would
accidentally.
We would. Well, it wouldn't be accidental.
Well, we knew about guns. We knew about guns, but I was in with people that never touched a gun before. Yeah. It's like, why did you decide to go in the military?
Well, I went in the military where everybody touches guns. Yeah, but they were afraid to give us guns because we might use them on each other or on them.
When I was in, they never touched a gun before they got there. And it's like, why are you? What compelled you to do this? And well, I'm really not much of a shooter. And I go, what compelled you to go into infantry?
Why are you going into infantry?
You've never touched a gun before.
Why are you?
This is kind of part of what you're going to have to do.
Why
you're not going to sit at a desk.
Well, yeah. Why pick a? Well, hey, they put me at a desk.
Yeah, but that's your job, But you still had to march around and carry a gun.
Yeah, and I had to learn how to use it. Actually, I learned how to use it very well.
They give you plenty of time to practice.
Yeah,
that's the good part.
But they do that with the fighter pilots. They never arm them up. So these guys, one of the pilots, the lady pilot that was in with the Tic Tac one, she was saying that was one of the things that really bothered her, because they're running around unarmed and they're seeing a craft that's outmaneuvering them, and the Tic Tac probe was actually applying countermeasures, or one of them was. Because you could hear it in the recording. One of the pilots was saying that it was deploying active countermeasures against detecting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, like the what do they call it? The flak, where they give it.
It's not flak. I think they were. I think it was electronic countermeasures to prevent targeting, or radar lock.
Oh.
And that sort of one of the pilots mentioned that. And that's something that would definitely fall in the category of being classified, because they don't want to know that some sort of craft can outmaneuver and deploy countermeasures that can counter our state-of-the-art fighter aircraft.
I don't want any of our pilots to get hurt or killed, but part of your job is for the security of the country, and it's like we should arm them, and they're dicking around. We don't know what they're doing. It's like, I'm sorry you can't figure out that you try to talk to it like they do in Star Trek. At least give it a warning. You're that smart. I'm going to shoot.
Hailing frequencies.
Hailing frequencies open.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we're going to try talking to you. If you don't respond, you're going to get shot at because you're invading U.S. U.S. soil.
Well, they're in international waters, but I think that's the new policy, is actually to try and capture this technology, and I have a feeling that they're going to allow this type of stuff to happen, where they'll be able to shoot at them.
Just show me that you at least tried.
Yeah.
It's like we're just, I took a picture of it.
Yeah.
Isn't that good enough? I'm completely baffled at our strategy with this.
Well,
It's like, what are we,
it's baffling
they're
that you
not.
can't track the things. I mean, we're supposed to be a state of the art military, and these things are run in circles around our ships and aircrafts. It's like, come on, let's apply the technology.
These orders are from above to say don't shoot. We know,
Oh God, I mean,
So it's like, yeah,
we were just talking about the top heavy brass in the
yeah.
Navy,
But
which is nuts.
is it possible? Is it possible? I know that I'm not really the guy for this. We've been contacted, or we're in contact, and it's like there's an agreement. We're not going to be shooting at you.
I don't know.
Is it possible? Of course, it's possible, but it's like, is it likely that they're already talking to us in the on the government level, and we just don't? It's not.
I don't know.
Nobody's. In which I'm always like, somebody's talking.
So if you look at our current state of our government, can you believe this group of individuals could be talking to anybody rationally?
No, because they can't figure out what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing.
What they're doing with the stuff they need to be doing.
Oh my God! Yeah. So this is going to work out. Yeah, that'll work out. That'll work out really well.
Don't get me. Don't get me started.
Yeah, we're not going to be seeing anything. We're not going to be seeing any sort of competency. I'm 100% sure at that.
Yeah, well, hopefully, can we not? I mean, real quick, can we not get anybody? Do younger people not want to get into government?
Get into what?
Is this just into government? Do we not any young? And I'll take at least a 50 or a 60-year-old, president. Do we need to do these 70 and 80-year-old? I mean, whatever they are.
They're perfectly functional. I mean, don't put down age. Don't be ageist.
Well, it's not. No, but I'm not really being ageist. But it's like,
don't be
some
ageist.
new idea. I'm only in the respect there might be some good new ideas. I'm old too. So
well, I mean, just because the president stands around looking like Cornholio doesn't mean that he's having cognitive difficulties.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying new ideas. Not that he has any problems.
Yeah.
His only problem is that he's, we're not bringing anything. There's a lot of status quo coming.
No, it's
like I'm biding my time in my 4 years to get through this.
It's turtles all the way down. It's incompetence all the way down. It's just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. No, they don't know what's going on. Hey, it's time for you to do an ad.
Great, here we go. At Orion BCS, their goal is to find the best program and rates available for their business. Their team has years of experience helping clients find lower rates for processing credit cards. They understand that every business is different, so let them spend the time to find out what suits your business best. So visit orionbcs.com and let them begin the process towards saving you money to help you realize your financial goals. Once again, visit orionbcs.com and contact them today. All programs of Orion BCS are subject to terms and conditions. Visit orionbcs.com for more details. We're back.
Hello. Hey, I'm going to flip on a space heater because I'm getting cold. And
okay.
If it makes too much noise, let me know. I'll turn it off.
We don't want to freeze to death.
No, I'm not seeing.
So so I'm just gonna, while you're doing that, I'm just gonna kind of mention another.
Yeah. I have a couple I want to talk about too.
1947. Another 47, July 6th, the Fairfield Sassoon Air Base in California, which is now Travis Air Force Base. Army Air Corps pilot Captain James H. Burniston and his wife were in the yard of their home near the base when they saw a round, flat object flying at an excessive rate of speed from the northwest to the southeast. The object reflected the sun strongly from its surface, according to Burniston, and its passage across 3/4 of the sky. It was seen to roll from side to side 3 times on its lateral axis. Burniston and his wife reported they could see no wings or fuselage, and the object was estimated to be about the size of a C-54, which is fairly significant cargo aircraft.
It's a big plane.
It appeared to be flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet. The pilot said, and it was in view for 60 seconds. That's pretty long. This report is one of the unidentified sightings in the Air Force files. I mean, I like this sighting as it's unusual as it turns on its axis, and it probably wouldn't be confused with any conventional aircraft at the time. And really, I mean, Travis was, or at the time, Fairfield Sassoon Air Base, they probably had nuclear, assets on the base. So it could have been one of those things where
That's close to Concord, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real close to Concord.
All right, so
yeah.
Concord is
Fairfield.
Concord is they had nuclear bomb bunkers.
Yep, we used to drive by those.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the Army. That's, that's where they take the trains in there and they load up the munitions and they would distribute them and come up to Travis, which is this airport or Air Force Base,
to ship them.
They would ship them out to all the the military theater. But we were pretty much 47. We were done.
47. I don't know where they had. I think I don't know how the distribution of nuclear weapons or the number that we had at the time, but the that air base near Roswell was that was a bomber wing group, a nuclear bomber group, and that might have been the only one in the U.S. at the time.
Well, this goes on to say, while no specific time is given for the sighting, there were reports of single objects seen around the Bay Area all afternoon. About midday at Hamilton Air Force Base, here we go with them again. Private named O'Hara saw a disc on his way to the mess hall. That was in case 422. Charles Butler and his son at Mill Valley saw a disc hurtle over Mount Tamalpais at 1:30. And several reports of single discs were made at San Francisco during the afternoon. So this is a big day. I mean, it's in July 6th, and
July.
It's interesting.
July was a busy time for this. I have a bunch of stuff for July. Well, July was the peak, I think. July.
Well, and that was Roswell too. It wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I got.
So I mean, what happened? What is going on? They're everywhere, or are they the same, but they're so fast we're seeing them all across the U.S. Or was it a ton of them?
I don't know. I think it was a ton. I think it was a ton of sightings. The peak.
But were they the same aircraft sighted all over the U.S.?
I don't think so. The peak was like July 6th or 7th. I have. I have a couple case reports. I got one from June 24th, case 36, Emmett, Idaho. The same afternoon that Kenneth Arnold made his observation. So Maury Island was June 21. Kenneth Arnold was June 24th. And Roswell was, not sure what the day. I have July 9th for the New York Times, which they talked about it. So all this stuff was happening around the same time. In case 36, the woman reported she saw a group of objects maneuvering in the sky on the same afternoon as Kenneth Arnold made his observation. Asking that her name not be quoted, the woman reported that she had seen a group of round, shining objects in the sky due east of Emmett at what appeared to be quite a distance and height. She said the shiny objects were weaving and circling very rapidly in formation. And after a while, they dispersed in all directions. And then there was July 4th in Portland, Oregon. During the afternoon, while others were reporting seeing discs all over the city, Frank Cooley, formerly a Marine Corps observer and employed by radio station KOIN in Portland, confirmed the numerous reports of disc-shaped objects. He estimated altitude of 20,000 feet, which he might have been able to do fairly accurately as a former observer. He flatly declared they were operating and maneuverable devices and believed that they were larger than generally supposed. They plainly exercised maneuvers in the sky. At one time, a number of the discs would get into formation and fly circles around another disc. It sounds like the Maury Island thing. It was hard, and it was around the same time. It was hard to follow their behavior exactly because of the great height, their gleaming surface, and their nature. He said that they could only be seen clearly when tilted to catch the sun rays. He was convinced, he added, that the discs were operating either by some human or remote control. Quickly dismissed suggestions that they might be ordinary, lightweight objects tossed around by air currents. Approximately at the same time that Cooley made his observations, a number of similar objects were seen from the window of the International News Service office in the Journal building. INS employees said they at first appeared to be high-flying birds as their motion undulated, and it appeared as if some kinds of wings propelled them. They banked sharply and without apparent system of direction. Two objects were so high that reports of their disc-like appearance could not be verified, but they seemed to be moving with high speed. They were last seen heading south after circling sharply over the west side area.
Something I've noticed about this book, that's a document, but it's a book. The case studies are the case listed aren't in order, and neither is in chronological order. I'm curious. I wonder if I could take this thing and rework it so it's in. I may do that and say, okay, we've seen this in July 5th, July 6th, July 8th. Some of them are in order, and then they go July 12th, and then they bump back to June. I'm wondering why they bounce all over. I mean, I understand what he was going for, because
they've sort of done that. In the front of the report, they have maps showing dates and case numbers and locations. So they've done that to a degree. So it's like the map 1 is June 1 through 15, case 1 through 9. And then they
continue. At the beginning of the document.
Yeah, the very beginning of the document. And then they continue. So the case numbers are tied into, it looks like they're tied into dates. They did a variety. So this is one level of organization. And then the other, what we're seeing when we look at it, there's two other levels of organization in this report. And the parts that we've been... Yeah. So the parts where we're reading they're organized into different categories. And let me go to the front of the document. See, this is why I print this stuff out, is I love e-documents and stuff, but
it's kind of a pain.
You got to flip.
Because I might have got it on a tablet. It's like wearing my finger out trying to get it to the. But I see what you're saying, but I'd like to see it by time and date.
Those are the maps.
Chronological order. The map only says, does it say? The map is the dots.
The dots.
It has the date. It has the date it was on, like case 531 through 690.
Well,
and it has single reports. And
the maps are 2 days each, and then case numbers for those days.
Sure, but it's not in order of time and date.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It is. Not tightly. So, like case 50 through 70 is June 25 to 26. So those are the sightings for those 2 days.
And what exact times are they for each one?
They don't. You'd have to go into the specific cases and annotate.
It really needs to be. Needs to be. I'm going to try at some point. I'll try to rework this document to where, just out of curiosity, it was seen here at this date and time.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. I'm
seen here at in order. And then it's like, is this the same one seen here and then later here?
Yeah. And I don't know why I don't know why. That's actually a really good way to analyze this. And I don't know why they did that.
I'd like to see is this the same thing being seen here and then here?
So what you're tracking, the thing is to track the movements, compare the cases, see if you're seeing the similar type craft over certain distances and spaces. Yeah.
Yes. So
I have no idea. That's a very logical thing to do. And this is one of the frustrations with looking at this UFO stuff is that there is not, I can't believe that people have not done this type of analysis. Oh yeah, that's a good, that's a good point.
It would
It's a very
just
good
be
point.
interesting. Then that way we can make our own report out
Yep.
of it. This is an awesome report. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is the
Oh,
best.
it's beautiful.
And it's perfect, but it's just not in
Yep.
not in chronological order. Just
It's
and
not
then the
in.
cases bounce.
Yeah, yeah. And so the way they've broken it down is they've broken it down into two different categories. So you have the maps, which give you a rough chronological idea, but
Well, that's
you can't tie things together from it. It just gives you
yeah.
observations.
I'm looking at the local map. They show me Chicago on July 7th, and they have all the case numbers on it. But I'd like to label though. I'd almost like to redo that map
Yeah.
instead of like taking every case and then put this time and just plug
Yep.
the time in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Oh, this time.
Yep. Yeah, it's exactly what they should have done. But they broke it down into different sections.
They did fine. They did fine the way they did it, but I don't think they thought about could this be the same one?
And that's
they don't. They're trying to solve the puzzle. They're just reporting. They're not solve. I'm looking to solve the puzzle.
Well, they're doing it.
You know?
And that's the reason that we're looking at this stuff, and this is the reason that we're diving into the historical stuff, is to try and get a handle on what's going on. And they broke it down into a pattern of appearance and behavior, which is helpful. And then they did special types of witnesses, and they do have chronological and references, but it doesn't. It needs to be.
Yeah, I want specific time and date.
They needed to do. They don't know how to handle their data, and they haven't handled it well.
And is
they've done. It's done a good job, but I mean, it's one guy. This is one guy who put this together, or a couple.
I mean, I can print out this map and almost just go to the case number, just write the time above the sighting number.
Yeah.
If for nothing more, I don't need to redo I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't do that. But that's the way to do it.
It wouldn't take that long to do it.
Hey, there was another case. Did I talk about the? Yep, I did that. There was another one I wanted to mention. General maneuvers, low swooping. It was terrible experience, he added. It numbed me from head to foot. That's from a guy that saw something in Waterloo, Iowa. Two pilots. This was looking for. This is New Mexico, landings and takeoffs. Near Case 105, June 29th, near Cliff, New Mexico. A rancher named Cliff. Interesting. Near Cliff. I thought he was named Cliff. Near Cliff, named Arthur Howard. Wow, he's got the same name as the town. Reported he had seen a round shining object fall to earth in broken country near his ranch sometime during the day. Later, two pilots, Bud Hagen of Hurley and Ed Nelson of Cliff, made an aerial search of the location. They found nothing, but they reported at one point while flying over the reported landing site, their plane flew through a layer of stinking air, something for which they could find.
I read that stinking air thing.
That's weird. Officials, I don't even know files. Case 200. All right. Protuberances, domes, fins, or knobs. Appendages, antennas, legs, and propellers. This one caught my eye. I still haven't gotten through the whole report. We may. Actually, next time we will. We should start looking at the Alfred loading, and the Great Flying Saucer Wave of 1947. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I think this guy was the early analysis for Project Saucer, or Project Sign, as they called it. And that's another 1947 report that we can look at. If it makes any sense, it's worth going into. But we haven't really looked at that. So case 242, July 4th, near Pattonville, Missouri, actually reminded me of the 1897 sightings. And 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time while on a picnic on Old St. Charles Road. 4 miles west of Pattonville. Nova Hart, what a name. A St. Louis mechanic living in his address. His wife, they used to give addresses of people when they were in the newspapers. It's before stalking.
Yeah.
His wife, Marveline, and her parents, Mr. and Mrs. J.H. Jackson, and their address of St. Louis, saw what appeared to be an inverted saucer-shaped object ribbed like a parachute canopy, gliding slowly in a western direction no more than 300 feet off the ground. Hart, a former infantryman trained as an aircraft spotter, said, "I've never seen anything like it. It looked more like a parachute than anything, though it appeared to have a propeller in the middle." And this is reminiscent of the 1897 sightings where they would have like a spinning thing on the bottom of they would look like a dirigible, but they'd have like a spinning something on the bottom of the craft.
Right.
I've never seen anything like it. It looked more like a parachute than anything, though it appeared to have a propeller in the middle. The propeller attached to the center of the underside appeared to act more as a stabilizer than a source of power. It made no noise as it floated over, silver gray in color. It moved in the direction of St. Charles, kept turning in a slow roll. Object was circular between 20 and 25 feet, and it had what looked to Mrs. Hart like a ragged tail on it, the propeller. They watched it for 3 or 4 minutes before it disappeared from view. Oh, and then this was a good one. I like the ones where Dr. McDonald interviewed him. So he contacted them. This is contacting them 20 years later. He interviewed them. They saw drifting. They thought it was moving at 50, 60 miles an hour, several hundred feet off the ground, moving south to north, not east to west as reported in the press. Upper surface was hemispherical with ribbing like a parachute canopy. Mrs. Hart compared it to the top of an umbrella. The object was silver gray, had some dull metallic surface covering like the dull side of aluminum foil, as Mrs. Hart put it. It tipped upward, exposing its underside, leveled off, moving northward, tipped in the opposite direction. This tipping puzzled Hart. Aside from the slow tipping action, there was no irregular motion, no spinning or undulation. This is also similar to the 1897 observations, as the underside appeared to consist of a red conical substructure point down and near the bottom of the cone, which Hart compared to red plastic, was something like a propeller, the appendage likened by Hart to a rope ladder. Mrs. Hart said it had the appearance to her of a tattered edge. It was about 5 or 6 feet in diameter and was moving too slowly and was too small to be the source of motive power, in their opinion. The propeller puzzled them a great deal. It made no noise. They mentioned that there was another number of other people in the picnic area who were all watching the object. Several people came up and asked them what they thought it was. One man in a truck tried to follow it. He was last seen hanging out the door as his truck went down the road in pursuit of the object. He was never heard of again. I don't know. They don't know who he was. I'm sure he was fine.
He's disappeared, probably.
He's just gone. He's just gone. Hart called the paper primarily to try and identify the object. He received a great deal of kidding about it and could understand why others were not reporting them. He was never interrogated by the Air Force. Oh. Do you want me to go over so I'm going to go over what I'm not going to ask you. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go over the Do it. I'm going to go over the New York Times articles that I pulled out. So I went into the New York Times archive and typed in flying saucer for the year 1947 and have a handful of articles. I mentioned one from August 10th, which talked about Maury Island. It contradicted a lot of the information. And this is the newspapers always get things sort of whatever. it's one person's opinion versus another. So there was a July 9th, 1947. There's an article, basically is from Roswell. It says, "Disc near bomb test site is just a weather balloon. Warrant officer solves a puzzle that baffled his superiors. Flying saucer tales pour in from round the world." So yeah, there were sightings all over the world. So this guy, Celestial Crockery, had the Armory up in the air for several hours yesterday before an Army officer explained that what a colleague thought was a flying disc was nothing more than a battered Army weather balloon. Okay, so this is sort of weird compared to the guy's actual statement. So the officer, Lieutenant Warren Hott, which they misspelled his name, it was Walter Hott. They spelled it A-A-U-G-H-T. It's A-A-U-T. And it was Walter Hott, not Warren Hott. He made no boss about the discovery. This is the guy that filed the initial news report that it was a flying saucer. Yeah, it was. It says, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality," his statement began. He told which intelligence office of the bomb group for the 8th Air Force had passed the flying disc along to higher headquarters. Ramsey General Roger Ramey had the somewhat different version of the flying disc. Found on a ranch, no one had seen it in the air, clumsy construction. Some sort of tin foil was reported and flown to a research laboratory in Wright Field, Ohio. So if it's just a weather balloon, why are they flying it to Wright Field? Finally, a lowly warrant officer identified it as a weather balloon.
And they grab somebody and go, "This is what you're going to say."
Yeah. It says, I got that.
Same thing as Roswell.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as Roswell.
Yeah. Actually, I actually have that.
Why put a weather balloon at Wright-Patterson?
I was looking at, I was looking at I went into one of the Roswell books and I looked up the warrant officer and I'm like, okay, so what's it say? So he was like, this warrant officer, he's like the weather guy on the base, right? And he's not supposed to leave his post. He's supposed to stay at his post. And so the general or somebody called him up and said, or colonel or something said, "We need you over here right now." And he's like, "I can't leave my post." And they go, "You need to get over here right now, and you need to grab a car. I don't care what you need to do, but you need to get here now." And then they bring him over, and they bring him into the room, and they show him this debris, and they go, "Do you recognize what this is?" He goes, "Yeah, it's and this is, the reporters are in the room, this general or something's in the room, this warrant officer, those weather guys in there, and and they're going, "Okay, what is this?" He goes, "Well, it's a radiosonde weather balloon. It's like I used to, when I was in Okinawa, we would release those from the ships to track the weather for the ship's artillery." And this guy, and it's like, and then he'd point out, he goes, "What is this?" He goes, "Well, that's the envelope for the reporters that were in the room." He goes, "That's the envelope of the thing." So years later, this guy's going, he's saying, the funny thing is that they were pointing at this thing, and they're telling me, I recognized it as this stuff. He goes, "But that type of radar sonde thing wasn't widely used at the time. You didn't see a lot of them."
Right.
So, and it's like, it makes you wonder, it's like, okay, maybe they, this is speculation. Maybe they just said, okay, we need to show that it's something other than what, our stupid intelligence officer reported. So they go into like the warehouse or someplace and they pull this thing out of storage and lay it out. So they got a piece of obsolete equipment and lay it out for the press. Who knows?
That is weird.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the things another article from the New York Times is July 6th, and it basically, there's no author on this, and it's just a little couple paragraphs. It's basically just making fun of the whole thing. And the annual sea serpent has been taking a much-needed rest along our coast this summer. But while Old Reliable has been lying low, those sky-swimming saucers have been flying high. Their natural habitat appears to be the Pacific Northwest. But they have now been observed from California to Nova Scotia. For weeks, the incredible disk have been zooming across the horizon at 3 times the rate of sound. That is fast going on anybody's speedometer. I don't even know why this was in the newspaper. There's no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird. There's July 6th. And there's no author on this. Anyway. Next article that I saw was July 6th, another one. And it's flying saucers mystify experts. Maybe prank of nature, they say. Scientists yesterday were at a loss for an explanation of the so-called flying saucers reported seen speeding through the sky by observers throughout the country. Unless it was those who first observed the strange phenomena beheld a prank of nature, now being perpetuated by the popular imagination. I speak English good one day. Military and civilian experts in the weather and its summer vagaries shrugged their shoulders when first asked for an explanation. Blah, blah, blah. Holiday throngs. Reports which came in over the July 4th holiday only served to deepen the mystery. Holiday throngs and more flyers joined in the saying that they had seen bright objects pancake-like in shape and all going at high speeds. The reports came from points from the Pacific coast to Nova Scotia and from Canada to the Gulf. Estimates of altitude and speed varied widely. And then they talk about E.J. Smith, who was the guy that was hanging out with Arnold when they were investigating the Maury Island thing.
Yeah.
Says the Associated Press reported observations by such reliable men as Captain E.J. Smith of United Airlines and co-pilot Ralph Stevens, who together with stewardess Marty Morrow described seeing the round flat object for 12 minutes while flying west from Boise, Idaho. And then they go over to what they think it is. And then a guy took a picture. Yeoman Frank Ryman of the Coast Guard Public Relations Office, Seattle, took a picture July 4th of something, which just showed like a dot. I've seen that picture. And then they go on to reported seen over Maine, and they go Gordon A. Atwater, curator of astronomy at Hayden Planetarium, was inclined to believe that the first reports of the strange sight was entirely authentic, but the most subsequent ones were brought on by a mild case of meteorological jitters with some mass hypnosis thrown in. And then they talk about ice crystals, and there's general to say that scientists of the General Electric Company and others have made huge ice crystals in the laboratory, some 2 feet in diameter. I'm making ice crystals in my freezer right now. Might be meteorites, electrical in nature. This is, and then this one guy talks about, and it's Foo Fighters. He's referring to Foo Fighters. Dr. John Schilt, Rutherford Professor of Astronomy at Columbia, consulted over the telephone, said he was more inclined to believe the true answer would be found from some phenomena seen during the last 2 wars, when speeding airplanes churned up the atmosphere and caused distortions of light rays which passed through soon afterwards. He said the effect might be largely electrical in nature due to the turmoil of the propeller and wings, causing something like smoke rings. And blah, blah, blah. And then there's another article where they're talking about it's visual.
Coming up on time, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, wrap this up. Science and Review, flying saucers, light, and other strange phenomena. They're basically saying that your eyes are screwed up. And this one on July 13th. And then the last one is July 4th, and says the flying disc failed to stir Air Force. Wright Field, Ohio Public Relations Office said the Air Material Command is making an investigation of saucer-shaped missiles recently seen. And, just that they're not that excited about it. So we are at time. So.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bill. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at alienprobe.net. Twitter and Instagram at Alien Probe Pod. YouTube, Alien Probe Podcast. Keep those listens coming. We're doing awesome. Thanks to our senior producer, Robert Anthony. And we'll catch you next week. Thank you.
All right. Don't forget Apple Podcasts. And that's
Don't
it.
forget Apple. I should probably mention that all podcast platforms everywhere.
Everywhere. All right. See you next week.